Hey everybody, Nate Peo here. You've probably heard you should be networking on LinkedIn if you want to meet new clients, but you have no idea where to begin. What I've done is I've created a 5-step guide to help make your profile stand out and helping you get started connecting. When you start building your network, you're going to start attracting more leads. So it's easy. Head on over to my website, natepeo.com, sign up and get my 5 steps of standing out on LinkedIn. And I'll show you how to start building your network.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. And How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a 6-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now. It makes a great book for corporate events too. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon.
Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Peo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello, and welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Peo. Of course, I am your host, Nate Peo. Today, I'm joined with a special guest, Jaco Vienings. He's an oenologist and viticulturist, a South African with a degree in winemaking, making wine across the world, meeting unique wine personalities on the Grape Escape TV, and now starting Hartlam Winery just outside Los Angeles has allowed Jaco the privilege to gain invaluable experience. As a winemaker and founder of the Grape Unknown, virtual wine tasting clubs and online wine education, his mission is to bridge the gap between winemakers and wine consumers by shutting down wine intimidation and making wine more accessible and enjoyable to understand. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thank you, Nate.
It's awesome to be here.
Yeah.
I love talking about wine because it's something that I think is there's like a lot of romance around wine. There's like dinners and conversation and laughters and this conversation. So what got you your first start in wine? When did you know that was something that you wanted to make a career out of?
That started a while ago, obviously in South Africa where I'm from. It's a different path than you would go in here in America. So in America, you finish high school, you might go to community college, and there you do 2 years, and then you kind of figure out after 2 years what you want to do, and that counts for 2 years of your bachelor's degree in a university, for instance. South Africa, you finish high school, and you're like, okay, you got to pick what you got to do, because once you go to university, that's going to be your life. End of story. And so, you write these tests and stuff in 11th grade and all that. And so at that point, the person I wrote this test, and the guy told me, this counselor said, okay, you're pretty good at numbers. You can be accountant. math maybe. I'm not sure your math is okay. You can also be a winemaker. I was like, what? Winemaker? It's like, yeah. And so we spoke about it, and essentially it came together where I didn't ever see myself working in an office or anything like that. But I am, I love science. I love math. I love being creative. And so working with my hands, I love being physical as well, working like physical work, and all that came together in winemaking. So it kind of just, it worked out. I decided I want to be a winemaker. And so the next year I went to university for just doing that. That's how it started.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So I usually like to ask my guests this question as the first question is, what does it mean? What does the word luck mean to you? What's your feeling around that word?
I thought of this a couple of times in my life, and being from South Africa, I have a little bit of a different take to this. And essentially, I think people can be lucky, but I think it stops at a certain point in your life. If you think about, I think if you're born into a family that's privileged, or if you're born into a family in America versus Zimbabwe, I think you're lucky. You don't get to choose that. I also think that, if you think about education or medical supplies or just life expectancy, like the life expectancy in Japan is over 80, and I think the life expectancy in Sierra Leone is 50. I mean, that's just luck that you were born into that family. And then also I think that the authority figures in your life is your parents. Do you have a dad? Don't you have a dad? Your teachers, your uncles, your brothers, are they good for you? Do they teach you stuff? Or don't they? And I'm talking about in a point until you reach an age where you kind of become self-aware and you become, you get to make decisions for yourself. And I think at that point, luck doesn't mean anything anymore. Because at that point, you have to be at the right time, at the right place, and you can start to make decisions for yourself. But in that time, before you reach that point, and I don't have an age or anything, but I just think about it, especially in my life, I think there's definitely a sense of luck in life of where you start out until you reach that age where you get to say, you know what, I don't think this is right, or I think this is right. I'm going to follow this path, or I'm going to follow this path. And then you make your own luck.
Yeah, there's for sure signs that are outside your control, but at some point, that's the cards you're dealt with, and you get to choose what you do with them next.
Exactly.
And so what brought you from South Africa to LA? That's quite the journey to make, especially, to go. South Africa is well known for their wines as well, and coming to the United States and California to try your luck.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, South Africa is very well known for the wine. I loved making wine there. It's my favorite place in the world. I go back once a year. But I am also an explorer and adventurer at heart. I love putting myself out there. And so right after I got my degree, I wanted to travel. So I made wine in France. I made wine in South Africa, obviously. And then I also made wine in Northern California. And so when it was in Northern California, I was living in a small town. And I know you're from California, so maybe you know this, but I'm pretty sure you don't. It's called Fiddletown, California. It's like an hour from Sacramento. Fiddletown. Population is 18. Okay.
Oh, that's tiny.
Yeah. So that's nobody. And back in the heyday, it was 80,000. It was an old gold mining town. So it's like a Western town. So I was living there, one of the best years in my life. And at that point, I met my future wife. So they came through this little town filming a Western film. So she was working on the costumes because she's studied at Ohio State as a costume designer. And I met her there. And so because of that, she also at that point was just diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, like 2 weeks earlier. So we kind of met in that circumstances. And so I got to know her and for just a day or two. And then we started meeting up on Facebook and all that. And we decided, you know what, we're going to actually meet up 3 months later. And so that all ended up to me picking up out of South Africa and ending up in Los Angeles, which is a kind of a crazy story in itself, because it's very far away from home, like you said.
So is that where you decided, when you were making wine in these other countries, were you like interning? Were you like in an apprenticeship program?
So you're straight out of university. So you don't know anything. And, you're supposed to gain experience. So you're basically a cellar hand or a people call it a winery assistant. And so you'll go to these places and you will work there and gain experience for a few months. But the funny thing in France is I gained experience there. It was an amazing experience for me. But other than working in the winery, we also did some immense amount of work in the vineyard where we will have to harvest grapes. And even though I studied viticulture as well, that wasn't what I was specializing in. So I was spending half my day from the break of, from dawn, harvesting grapes in the vineyards, with cutting your fingers open with scissors. I'm just not used to this crazy experience. And then heading over to the cellar. And after a day in the vineyard and in the cellar, they take you over to this place to start renovating like 1600 houses from the 1600s for Airbnbs. It was just the craziest experience for me, where so that it encompassed more than just making wine. But that's also where you learn from life,
You got to cut your teeth somewhere for sure, and that's what, like, the people that you learn from, they shape. You're basically a wine artiste would be the words, and you're learning from the people that have done it before, and they influence you in the way you create wine in the future. So, when did you decide that you wanted to start your own winery, and what's been your experience so far with creating it, especially in Los Angeles, which isn't as worldly known for their wines as it is, its counterparts in Napa Valley and Sonoma?
Yes, it isn't as worldly known as Napa. We've got Temecula down here. We've got Malibu wine region, which is very close to us. But let me just say that first there. That's one thing that as wine drinkers, we need to realize that wine comes from more places than just Napa, than just, Bordeaux or Burgundy and all those kind of places. We went to the only winery in Belize, when we filmed the Grape Escape TV, which is, they made fruit wines and they made wine from concentrate, but they still made wine. So fair enough, There's wineries in Kenya and Africa. It's all over the place. So I think my experience with starting, my idea of the winery came from when I was in France. So imagine this, I'm sitting in France. I had this very, very old house, which there's about 5 rooms in the place. 3 of them I didn't go into because I was too scared. It was like all that's old, like puppets and stuff in there. I'm completely by myself. I don't have a TV. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a laptop. And so the radio's in French. I don't speak French that well. So I end up in the evenings after my crazy day sitting and overlooking this vineyard and just drinking wine by myself. And it went on like that for months. And so I had so much time to really think for myself, what is it that I actually want to do with my life? And at that point already, and I don't think this would have happened if I weren't in that situation. This is where my gear started turning off. I'm also very much on-air personality and do the Grape Escape TV and AfterBuzz TV and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to get into that space as well with wine because I kind of wanted to connect the two. I didn't know how. And so that is where it all started for me. In France, overlooking the vineyards, kind of just with too much time on my hands, starting to plan out my future. And then my experience with the winery, it's a unique situation where we have a brewery already established, which has nothing to do with me, but they had a big space available in the space where they are. And the guy wanted to add wine, but he didn't want to add wine as a brewer because a lot of people make that mistake and you can't really trust the quality. He wanted to add wine as from a winemaker's perspective. Mm-hmm. And so we started that and we built this place up from the ground last year, which was quite difficult because you start from nothing. I've never built a winery myself, but we figured it out. And it's been good so far. And the first wines are launching now in the tasting room, I think in 3 weeks.
Okay.
We're ready.
Very cool. So what kind of wines are you focusing on making?
I can do anything essentially that, like I said, you can be creative. So last season, I decided to make a pet nut. I don't know if you've heard of pet nut before, because you said you own a wine shop.
No, that one doesn't sound that familiar.
Okay. So pet nut is called Pétillant Naturel. It's essentially a sparkling wine. And that's how the people make sparkling wine before champagne. So think about the monks in the 1600s. Mm-hmm. And so essentially, you just have this essentially half fermented wine, finished fermentation in the bottle, so it carbonates itself. But so it's very different from champagne, but you get a result that is unfiltered. There's not really anything added to the wine. It carbonates itself. It's Pétillant Naturel, pet nut, so that means natural bubbles in French. And so I made one of those last season, and it turned out really well. We made orange wine. So orange wine is when you make a white wine in a red wine way. Because as the listeners might know, when we have a white wine, you separate the skins and the juice. When you have a red wine, you keep the skins with the juice. Do you know why, Nate?
For the tannins.
Well, the tannins for the color, right? Because the color sits in the skins of grapes. right?
Yeah.
So we're going to keep the skins with the juice because we want that redness into the juice and so we want the red wine to be red. And so if you make a white wine in that style where you ferment the white juice on the white skins, you get a completely different style of white wine. It's called orange wine. So I made one of those, and that you also age in oak barrels. So I can play all over the place. And so what I do a lot is I try and teach. I would say I have a Chardonnay, the exact same grapes, but this Chardonnay is oak aged, and this exact same Chardonnay is stainless steel aged. And so you can taste the difference in those.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit about the show before the show started about me and my wife had owned a wine shop, and we became educated enough that we knew enough about wine that we were probably dangerous, that we could recommend a lot of stuff to the average wine drinker. But when it came to meeting the wine geeks, the wine snobs, the typical like very into wine stuff, like it was like overwhelming because people would be like, oh, well, this is very from this place and it was like this and I can smell this grape. And I'm like, I don't get that. Like, that's very intimidating to me. And you're saying, hey, there's a myth that you need to be an expert at wine to enjoy wine. So you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing to kind of demystify that?
Oh, that's such a good question. And just the word wine snob kind of shivers down my spine. I think to start off, we need to redefine that word in a sense of, if people say that a wine snob, a lot of people think that's a good thing. Oh, I'm a wine snob because you're snobbish about wine. But in reality, to me, it means that you might think maybe you know more or know more about in regards to the experience that you might have, or you might know surface level wine knowledge, but as soon as you start to dig deeper, you kind of fall flat. And it happens when you start regurgitating information that you hear somewhere else, and it doesn't add value to anybody's wine experience. So we need to start redefining what does that mean. I don't consider myself a wine snob, but in the sense of, like you said, you feel so intimidated sometimes when you learn. Even myself as a winemaker, and I mean, I've met plenty of people where I were like, yes, so this is, especially in my earlier career, this is kind of scary just to talk wine with these people because they talk in these terms. And that's before I kind of came to this realization about wine snobbinism, where it scares you, it's intimidating, and it's confusing. And so I started thinking, well, you've got winemakers. I work with plenty of winemakers. My brother is a winemaker. And in the winery, when you're working there, it's amazing. The culture is fun. It's very chill. I mean, obviously it's different in different places, but the takeaway for me that I've always experienced is that there's an open culture where you can ask any question. There's a willingness to learn. Maybe if you're too busy, you'll ask the question later afterwards as you're working with these people. And so the wine is made in that way, with maybe love and with creativity and with openness. Then as wine is moving up the supply chain to where you reach it in that restaurant, where you're drinking it, and you're getting those people in your wine store buying your wine or that wine, you get this snobbishness or this intimidation attached to it. My question is always, why? Like, what happened in the supply chain? Like, why is wine perceived and enjoyed like this? And so essentially what's happening is we're creating an exclusive environment where, you know, I'm only going to enjoy wine with a select few people, or if you're good enough about wine, where wine is supposed to be enjoyed and bring people together. And just taking it from that sense. So if you want to know about wine and you want to talk like this and this and about wine, then sure, there will be people for you to deal with and do that with. That's fine. But the vast majority of wine drinkers don't fall in that category. And I think these wine drinkers that don't fall in that category, for some reason, they think that the vast majority of wine drinkers is in fact educated or snobbish rather, you know, because they can be educated. Yeah. And so with the Grape Unknown, what we're doing is just kind of breaking down those walls, giving people a safe space to ask any question with wine tastings and just saying it's okay. It's okay if you don't know everything. And if you and also a sense of wanting to learn. They say a wine snob wouldn't want to learn. They would want to tell you that they know. If that makes sense. Versus
that makes complete sense. They want to show off their knowledge and show that they know a bit more than you. But for me, the best wines I've always found where the circumstances you were drinking it under, like the people you were with, the atmosphere you're around, the music that was playing. Was it a nice sunny day, or was it kind of like a cool day, like you're having some soup and you're bundled up? Like those things to me always played a bigger part in the enjoyment of wine. And there's even times where I'm like, this wine was so fantastic, and I have this memory of it because it's the memory of the whole event, and then this whole circumstance, and then you drink it at home by yourself and you're like, this really wasn't quite as good as I remembered it. I think it has so much to do with the people you're around, that you surround yourself. And it does. Wine brings people together over food, breaking bread, and just of conversation and community. It's a bond.
You absolutely, Nate, hit the nail on the head. I love it. Okay, so what's your favorite wine? Do you have a favorite wine, or let's just say white or red?
I like red.
Okay, what about your wife?
She likes red.
Oh, damn. Okay. Let's for a moment just imagine that you. Okay, let's say you like you like. Is there any specific red wine you like? Cab, Merlot, Malbec.
I like Chianti a lot. I like French. Good. I like more old world
wines, a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're hanging out, summertime. All right, by the pool. It's me and you. All right, and. We're in the Caribbean and it's hot and it's humid. Are you going to get the Chianti? Are you going to get that Cabernet Sauvignon? Or, no. What are you going to get?
If I'm drinking wine, I'd probably get a Sauv Blanc or something real light. Because it's refreshing, and so that right there, it's a circumstance. But let's say we go to Aspen and where it's snowing outside and Michael Bublé is playing on the radio and the fire is going. Are you going to go for the Pinot Grigio? Are you going to go for the Sauv Blanc? Or are you going to go for your Chianti? I would go for the red, the big.
And the only determining factor there was the weather, right? Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. I usually teach that a lot, and essentially what I also find is that the body of wine, so that weightiness in your mouth that you feel in your mouth, I feel that without maybe thinking about it, has a big determination of the area, of the people. So do you want to drink something that goes down easily, like a lighter white wine, or do you want to kind of struggle drinking it? Right. And I think so if you go to a wedding or a networking and you want to be able to talk easily and you just want to, relax, you're not going to drink red wine usually unless you really have a taste for it,
Yeah.
So absolutely.
It's definitely, I've never heard it explained in that manner with related to the environment you're drinking under, but it makes complete sense. Like I understand like, hey, you don't want to drink a heavy red just as like you don't eat soup on a hot day. Like there's different things you do, but they do tend to go and they kind of reinforce that moment and that experience and the air and the weather around you and the people you're with, for
Absolutely.
sure.
I mean, it gets more complicated than this, and you should never generalize in the wine industry. I've made that mistake. You should never do it because you'll get burned. Wine industry is a very difficult thing to try and stand out and kind of help people and move because there's so many opinions, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't say that it's always the case, but for the vast majority of times, that is usually how it would work out, where your environment does dictate a lot what you want to drink. Now, if you're out drinking specific wine because you want to learn, then you're going to do it for that reason. You're going to buy specific wines to learn specific traits and aspects and elements of that wine, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not the same situation.
Yeah, but I do agree that you do want to experiment. You do want to try other things because what I've found is your palate evolves significantly and you start going out like usually like for me, probably my experience with wine was buying red wines at the grocery store, and you just kind of go, I like this Pinot or I like this Cab, and they're not like they're mass-produced wines, but you think you like them. You go, well, I only drink this type of wine. You go, well, that's because you haven't experienced it in a different way. But like you say, go somewhere else to a nice restaurant and have a nice glass of Pinot Grigio with a nice light, food, and it's like, oh, that changes the experience. Like I didn't know I liked white wine so much. Like I'm going to go down this thing, and you go, well, if you like this white wine, you might like this other varietal, or you might like this from this region, or you start discovering like, oh, there's little aspects, there's so much nuances, so many different things, and I like a bunch of stuff, and you just go like I don't know why, but I feel like I would say never, but I always feel weird drinking the same wine more than one time because you only are going to drink so many wines in your entire life, right? There's only so many days you're going to live. You're only going to drink wine on so many days of the year. And if you always drink the same one, there's so much variety out there and experience to be had. Like you're just kind of like choosing, like, okay, I'm gonna stick to this one. That means I'm discarding something else I could have tried and experienced and maybe gone a different way and discovered something about myself. So that's kind of like this weird thing that I have about not. I tend not to try to drink the same wine too many times.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So you're a very specific type of wine lover where, there's a difference between finding wine interesting and being interested in wine. And I think you're interested in wine. I can see that because you do. So someone that find wine interesting would go to the store. They would see the other options. Maybe they don't know how to read the label perfectly, but it's maybe overwhelming, and they kind of settle on the three that they like. Interested in wine is when you go out there with the purpose of seeking something else because you put a certain value to it where, I've only got so much time on this planet and there's a lot of wine to drink. So I need to make sure that I drink a little bit more,
Yeah. My favorite days were when the sales rep always came by the shop at the end of the day and they'd have 6 to 8 bottles of wine that they'd been tasting with all the shop owners throughout the day. And they're like, okay, well, I'm not taking these home with me. And so you got a quarter of a bottle of 6 wines or 8 wines. You're like, oh, cool. We get to have a variety of stuff to have with dinner. That was I guess one of the favorite benefits
of owning a wine store and a big takeaway. But Nate, I want to ask you just on the topic of, owning a wine store, because I don't know many people that has that. Your overall takeaway about people and their relationship to wine that come into that store, buy those wines, how they speak about it. Do you think the majority of them would be somebody that is, intimidated and because a wine store is also a specific customer versus the grocery store. So I guess for the wine store, do you find that most people would be people that is, coming in there and know what they're talking about, or also people that want to learn like you?
I would say that they were people that, they're all kinds, but they were definitely not buy at the grocery store. They probably cut their teeth maybe drinking there, or they liked going to wineries and experience it, and they just knew hey, they didn't want to buy generic, big brand name, just marketing wines. They wanted something that had a little bit of a character and a little bit of story, and they liked various locations. And typically, it's kind of like if you go to the grocery store in the craft beer world, it's like, hey, the grocery store is going to have Coors Light, Bud Light, Michelob, all these. And then they'll have this little small section where you can get like 2 or 3 little local brewery beers, but you can't get a lot. So you have to go to a specialty store, a liquor store, something like that has a wide variety of beers. And wine's that same way. You're going to go to the wine shop and they're going to have mostly generic stuff, and then they'll have a few popular bigger brands that are kind of popular. They always have what would be one that they always have, drawn a blank on it, but they're not going to have the ones people are going to seek out, and a lot of times that's kind of restricted too. And the whole way wine's sold is kind of goofy to begin with. There's on premise and off premise, and you can buy which what, and if you buy, you got to buy a bunch of this wine if you want this other wine. It's just a really weird industry. But the wine shops, people go there because they know, hey, I can't get this anywhere else, but they still fall on this huge scale. There are people who come in and be like, hey, I'm very interested in wine, but my price point is $20 to $30. So they kind of pick stuff and experiment through there. And then there's people that just go, I just look at 95 points and $100 and over, and I don't know anything about it, but I'm just going to drop that money down because it's got to be good because it's expensive and it's got high ratings.
Right there, I would immediately concern, because that also I can see where they would tend to go. So if you say 95 points, 99 points must be a good wine, and most likely it is for the person that rated it.
Yeah.
What people don't understand sometimes is that, we're also different. Anybody can really tell you, oh, you know what? I get caramel chocolate in this wine. Okay. Well, actually, someone can say, you know what? Oh, there's no caramel in there. You can't say that because that person might just be super sensitive to the aroma of, let's say, caramel, and you just might not. And so when you do a points version, and I usually tell people, if you want to learn about wine, stay away from the points, because if you, it's just such a marketing it's not a marketing scheme or anything. Obviously, it gets a certain amount of points with that rating system because it might be good, and because of that, it just measured that much. But you have to understand that your preferences are different. And you can drink those 95-point wines, but you should be able to say, you know what, I like it, but this is the reasons why I maybe don't like it, or this is what I like so much, or what is different from the person rating it. You know what I mean? You should be able to differ. Because the power of suggestion in the wine industry is extremely strong. So we would be drinking a wine. I'd be like, Nate, you get that strawberry, right? And you'll be like, oh, yeah, now that you say it, I heard all that. Now that you say it, full on.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens all the time.
All the time. So if you're going to get strawberry, you're going to get strawberry. Maybe, so the power of suggestion is huge. And it comes through in marketing, label, 95 points, 97 points as well.
Yeah, so it was fun owning a wine shop, and it's definitely like the experience can't be replaced, and we learned a ton about it. So it was
but never again.
No, probably not. It's a hard thing to crack. I mean, the way sales are done, it's people are doing a lot of online stuff, but there's a lot of laws about what you can and can't do with where you can ship wine. So it's really hard to compete in the market when it's kind of cutthroat out there with the big box stores that can come in and say, like, hey, I'm going to sell a bottle of wine for $35. So, okay, well, I can't even buy that wine cheaper than $32 or $33. Like $2 markup on a bottle of wine.
Yeah, that's
isn't very much. And there you can't buy it cheap enough, but they're buying, a pallet of that wine, and you're buying 4 or 5 cases at a time. Yeah. You can never compete. So it's really hard to make it work.
You can't get ahead of the game. So if you have to say, to bring it back to the premise of this podcast, you were all in, but if you want someone else to be all into a wine store, what advice would you give them?
I would say get nichey, get really niche down.
There you go.
Try to build a community of people that just want to come in and just say, hey, like if I owned a wine shop in LA, like there's probably local winemakers in that area not making they're making wines, but they don't have a tasting room, or they don't have per se this big shop to be in. And you say, okay, why don't you guys come in here and we'll feature you as like guest winemakers or guest this. And so you'd have more of like a virtual like a rotating taste. Like here's what I'm thinking. It's like it's like an incubator for wineries where people come in and they showcase their wines, and then they get this little following, and then like maybe they graduate out and then they start their own little
small wineries though. Small wineries.
Big, yeah. They come in, get a following, and then branch out. Are they still there? And you just kind of bring these people local in, and you develop this community of people that like really come in, and probably be in a center of like a little bit of a outdoorsy type mall where people come and maybe they grab like some street tacos or something like this, or little bits of food, and you could buy a glass of wine, sit on the patio and drink it. It'd be something like that. That's what I would recommend.
I'm just going to go on a limb and say, I think you've got it figured out. I'm just saying, I would support that. That sounds awesome.
Sounds fantastic. So let me ask you that question. What does all in mean to you around an idea or an outcome?
I feel like I've been all in many things in my life, like just leaving South Africa, moving across the world. Like I said, but it also comes with that adventurous kind of feeling. I would say, I don't think more all in is just go big or go home. I think it's more than that. I think when you think about all in, I don't think it should be something where you kind of just jump off a cliff into the abyss and you're all in, like you're just going to hope you have a parachute on. I don't think it's supposed to be that. I think all in can stem from having a confidence and a self-assertiveness where you know that you can kind of figure out a problem if it shows up. And so that, I guess, would be rooted within, having a really good foundation. So if you are looking after yourself mentally, making sure that you are looking yourself emotionally and physically, making sure that you take time away from your business, making sure that you know how to balance those aspects. And if you have that foundation where you can pull from, which we've been doing our business, I think that to me means that you're all in. Otherwise, you're just going to be all in more of it's an illusion kind of way. Like, yeah, you're just going to go for it and be all in and jump off the cliff. But that's usually when you kind of pull out 4 months later, and be like, yeah, this wasn't really for me.
Yeah, that happens a lot. You think you want to like pedal to the metal, and it's not sustainable, and then you just like, whoa,
Exactly.
that's too much. I have to hit the eject button. So I can definitely relate to that. So let's talk back to Hartlam Winery. Who is your ideal wine drinker that's looking to connect with, or who are you really trying to connect the most with?
So for the Hartlam Winery, it's simple. Like we only make wines, almost like you said, for your wine shop. We only make wines for our tasting rooms. I don't have it on the shelves at all. It's super craft, unique wines. And so for that aspect, my ideal customer would be somebody that is just coming in, loves to enjoy a glass of wine, and might be willing to learn. And that's it. That's okay for me, because that's the premise of what that wine is sold in. For the Grape Unknown, I would say people, we're catering to beginner winos. And beginner doesn't mean that you drink wine for the first time. Beginner means that you might be drinking wine for the first time, but also people that have been drinking wine for 5 years, but they just decided, you know what, I think it's time that I start understanding, not just knowing, but understanding why I like something or why I don't like something. Being able to kind of pull those elements out of a wine. And so that's the people that we are after, looking for people that was willing to learn, open-mindedness. And we are very specific about our group, because we've got the Grape Unknown Club, tasting club, where we meet every month and we kind of have live wine tastings. And the first thing there is, if you're going to come in there and be mean or rude or be an idiot or something like that, then it's in the rules. Goodbye. Like we don't. We just there needs to be a safe space where people learn together and kind of build each other up. So that's the kind of people that we are looking for, that we're out to get.
Awesome stuff. So if somebody wants to get connected with you, where can they go to find you?
Simple. Just the website, Grape Unknown, grapeunknown.com. And there's free wine tastings. I also have free wine tastings live with me. They can join me to learn more about everything. And that's it. You just go to the homepage. It's all there.
Awesome stuff. So all that will be listed in the show notes. We'll be able to connect with you. If you reach out to Jaco, let him know where you found him, say hi, and check out his winery for sure. Had a great time chatting with you.
Thank you very much, Nate. You're very close to me, I must say, right?
Yeah,
you're very close.
We're just down the street. Well, next time we're up in LA, we'll have to hunt you down.
Yeah, no, well, hunt me down when you're in St. Gabriel. It's not that far, okay? So I would love to host you at the winery as well, if you want to.
I'd love to stop
You and your wife.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for having me. It was amazing. I love the premise of the show. I've learned a lot being here. I'm sure a lot of people, of the listeners, learned a lot, and I really appreciate just being here. Thanks for having me.
There's so much more to learn, and it's just like, hey, get your interest piqued and go out there and find out more. And going to the Grape Unknown is like a great spot to just kind of like you dive in a little bit, you learn a little bit more. And what ends up happening is you meet somebody else, introduce you to somebody else. And like, before you know it, you're like going to all these like crazy wine tasting events you've never even heard of before. And you're meeting amazing people, having great conversation. It's a wild time. So
I love
definitely, if you have curiosity, go check it out. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Nate. Have a good one.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.